Hey guys, welcome to the third day of the web design course. Today we'll be looking at CSS. But before we go into CSS, let me show you something that I forgot to show you last time. So we created links last time to pages, but these pages are not within our website. It leads to another website. Like this leads to my website, this leads to LinkedIn, this leads to GitHub. It doesn't the link is not within our website. So uh, let's say I want to create page 2 for my resume. So I'm going to link it to page2.html and say page 2 here /a. So this is basically how you create a link to a page within your own website. So page2.html, when you click on it, it goes to a file called page2.html. So you need to create that page2.html right now. And exclamatory mark, and I'm just gonna add some content here. Projects. Okay, that's just some content. I'm not gonna add any more. It's just to show you how this works. So let me just open this video. This folder. There it is. So yeah, we have page 2 here. When you press it, it goes to that. And now notice here that it is page2.html. You have to provide the whole link. Now I'm going to give you a tip here. If you want to use just page 2 instead of something like that, so instead of page2.html, whoever is using your website doesn't have to type .html, just has to type page 2. Now in order to do that, what you need to do is you need to create a new folder and name that folder page 2 and put this page there and change this to index.html. So that is how basically a server works. So if it doesn't find an extension here, it assumes that it's a folder, so which we have here. There's a folder here, and when it goes inside a folder, if it sees an index.html, it renders that page. It doesn't look for, even if index.html is not here, the server by default, which I told you yesterday, loads this. So just the directory or the folder name is enough. So let's see if that works. Send this. Going back, page 2. What happened there? It works fine. Okay. What? Oh, it's because we don't have a server. Okay. Okay. If we did actually have a server, it wouldn't show this thing. It would just directly go into index.html. I cannot show you about the server right now, but it usually works like that. Let me just show you a code you can use to make a server. if you remember what I said in the first class, a server is something I showed you as a computer, but a server can also refer to a program like this, which just serves you a website. It doesn't actually have to be a computer. It can be a server, can also mean a software within your computer. So over here it shows that it's serving on 000 port 8000. This is what we should be concerned about. So in order to communicate with that server, you just have to go to localhost 8000. So now if we go to page 2, it'll go directly to this page. So that's basically how a server works. You can use this code if you already have Python installed. You can use this command to start a server as quick as that. You just have to open the command prompt or terminal in that folder, in the folder of your project, and do this. Even if you don't do it, it's fine. You can still use page2.html. I know this is it's going to be a bit complicated for beginners. This is meant for those who already know about the stuff. So yeah, I'm just going to close this server now. I just wanted to show you how it worked, but let's just switch to our old .html itself, which is much less complicated. Okay, and let's also add a link to page 2 in order to go back to page 1. This time it could be index.html and page 1. So page 2 and back to page 1. So that's how you can link to your own website. I just wanted to say that before we start the CSS tutorial. So CSS is used to change the styling of your document. So this is an example of CSS code. Okay, I hope you recognize these are tag names. So what CSS basically does is this is the syntax of CSS. At first you need to mention to what you're applying a style to. Okay, what you're applying, like if you want to change the background color of the body, you need to mention body here, and then open curly brackets, and then you put background color. This is the syntax for changing the background color, and then you can mention some color here. You can use this tool to get the color. There are other ways of putting the color, and I'll show you that in a moment. Similarly here, when you do this, what happens is these two styling properties will be applied to just h1, the heading. It won't apply to anything else, it would just apply to heading. We'll see that later. And then there's this paragraph. Here these two properties would be applied just to p. I think you can understand what these styling options are just by reading it. Like this color, it changes the text color. This changes the background color. This changes text color. Text align center, it makes a text center line. Font family changes the font style, and font size changes the font size. That's simple, right? There are lots of options like this available. You can check it out in CSS references over here. I'm not going to be covering all of the styling options because there's a lot of them, but I'll be covering some basic essential ones. So now, how do we include this into our website? That's what we're going to look at right now. So first we need to create a file, just like .html we need to create .css, and let's say I'm going to call it style.css. okay, and what should we change here? Right, just to show you how things work, I'm going to change the background color of the, say in Visual Studio Code, all this is like some of the I mean all the styles are shown as suggestions when you type something, and also the color. Well, okay, so you can use the name of the colors like this. Otherwise, there's another code called the Hex Code, which contains 6 digits. Let me separate that. Okay, it contains 6 digits, which basically represents the red, green, and blue intensity. It means that any color in the world can be split into red, green, and blue. So it basically any color, you can make any color that you want by mixing these 3 colors. So this represents how much of red, how much of green, and how much of blue do you want in your color. So here I'm mentioning 0 in for all of them, which means that there won't be any red, any green, or any blue. In which case, okay, I'll show you that later. We didn't link our style which we didn't link our style sheet. This is called a style sheet, just like this is called HTML document. This is called a style sheet. We didn't link our style sheet to our web page, so let us do that first. So the syntax for doing that is we are supposed to tell the browser that we have to link style sheet to the page. So that's why we're including it inside the head. Like I told you before, head contains information to be conveyed to the server, to the browser rather than the audience. So in Visual Studio Code, you just have to type link CSS, and it will automatically come how to the code to link, which contains link rel style sheet, which basically says that we are linking a style sheet, and then ref, which we already saw in the anchor tag. It just shows contains the link to the style sheet. So by default, Visual Studio Code just puts style.css. It's the same name that we used here. If you use some other name, you get the name of the style sheet here. So yeah, that's basically it. So it should work right now. See, so I changed the background color to black. This is what this means. 0 0 0 0 0 0. It means no green, no red, no green, no blue. Let's say I add a little bit of red here. It should be together. So it turns a little red. So you can go from 0 0 to 0 1 0 2 like that to FF. It is in hexadecimal. If you don't know what hexadecimal is, it basically means it, like in our decimal system we have 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. These are digits we have. In hexadecimal we have more digits. We consider A, B, C, D, E, and F as digits as well. So after 9 comes A, not 10, B, not 11, C, not 12, D, not 13, E, not 14, and F, not 15. So just like we write 1 0, we can also write A 2 or whatever. So hexadecimal code, it ranges, so you can change the intensity of red from 0 0 0 1, it goes up like 1 0 2 FF. So here it will be pure red. So yeah, that's how it works. Similarly, if you put everything as FF, it would turn white. So you have options from 0 0 0 0 0 0 to, which is black, to FF FF FF, that's white. uh, I'm just going to make it a little grayish color, so I'm going to add, let's say E0 E0 E0. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, it looks a bit dull. Let me see, FA. I'm used to this color coding format, so I might use some colors just like that. If you want, I'm guessing there's a color tool here. Anyway, you can use this tool here, color picker tool, which is available, which W3 schools provide. So they give you the code, you just have to select a color and then they'll give you the code over here. You can select your own code. And other than hexa, there is also this format, which uses RGB. This format, it's the same as almost the same as hex. This represents red, this represents green, and this represents blue. This is also another format. I don't use it that much, so I don't know anything about it. Yeah, it's basically the same as this, but here it uses the decimal system rather than the hexa system. You can use this or this, it depends on you really, but I prefer using this because this is shorter. So yeah, that's basically how you change the background color. I'm also going to change the font for that, which, as we saw earlier, it is font family. So these are the options that you have by default over here. You can also these are the images, these are the font that is available across all devices. You don't these fonts will be, you can guarantee that these fonts will be available in the computer of any user, regardless of the operating system or which browser is used. So these are hence these are called web safe fonts, which means that you can be sure that these fonts will be available inside your user's computer, because you need to have that font. If my computer didn't have Arial or Helvetica, uh, what I'm doing now won't work. So the font that you use, that you are applying to the CSS, should be there in the person's computer, or you should provide that font file. I'll talk to you about how to add these font files later, but let's just use these pre-existing fonts for now. So I change that, we change the font. So yeah, now let's say next thing I want to do is I want to change the spacing around this image tag. I want a little bit more spacing on the top, let's say. So I'll be applying this to the image tag, right? The way to add spacing around the image is margin. So I'm going to add spacing of 24 pixels. So pixel is a unit, just like centimeter, which it stands for pixels. So this adds 24 pixels of spacing around the image. So that's what pixel stands for. As you can see here, there is 24 pixels spacing around the image. Now this is a short form. It adds 24 pixels all around the image. And if you want to just add it to the top, you can do margin top, there's margin bottom, there's margin left, and there's margin right, so that you can add spacing specifically. Or there's another way of doing that. You can add 4 units, where so 24 pixels the top, the left, bottom, and the right. So that's what that stands for. So I only want 24 pixels at the top, so let's just put 6 at the bottom as well. So now there's 24 px at the top and 6 px at the bottom. Let me just change it just to show you guys a difference. 40 px in the bottom. So you see so this is a short form for doing that. So I'm going to change it back to 6. And another tip, there's another unit or whatever you can use called auto. What auto does is, if you put auto on the left and the right, what happens is it puts enough spacing on the left and right to make the image centered. It should be centered. It isn't getting centered. I'll show you why later, but let's just stick to 0px for now. Okay, and if I want to make everything centered, I'm just going to add the text line center, which I showed you earlier. So now everything's in the center. Now I also don't want these in 3 lines, so I'm just going to get rid of the BR. But this looks kind of messy. I'm just going to add some spacing in between, so you're adding it to the A tag, so margin 0px. And now here's another short form, 0px 6px, just 2. If you mention just 2 units, what happens is 0px will be added to the top and bottom, and 6px will be added to the right and left, which you can see here. If I added say 24px here, it doesn't work. I'll tell you why later. There's this thing I should be showing, but I'll show you later. In any case, 0px 6px, this thing represents the left and right, and 0px up and down. And I'll show you that in the image. In this case, yeah, the top and the bottom has 24px, and the right and left has 0px. So that's what this short form stands for. So yeah, this looks better right now. So I'm going to change the font size here. Let me just refresh. I'm going to change the font size of the heading 1. Now to do that, we use font size. I'm going to say 60px. Let's try that. Yeah, okay. And also, if you notice, this is a bit bold, and I don't want it to be bold. So how you can change that is font weight. So by default, the normal font weight is 300, and sorry, 600, I guess. No, 300. Sorry. wait. $300. Okay, so 400 is, sorry, I forgot that. 400 is the normal one, and as you go higher, it becomes more and more bolder, and when you go lower, it becomes more and more thinner. Or you can use these bold, bolder, lighter, normal. What do you want? Let's just say I'm going to use normal for now. So that changes the thin. Let me just try thin. Okay, there's no thin option available. That's why it didn't become thin. So I'm just going to put 400 here for now. Let's just say, oh, it's not thin. I guess it's light. No, there's no light option. So 400 is the minimum, I guess. So yeah, that's what happened here. Let's change H2 as well. Font size excuse me, 48. I'm gonna do the same here. Education. Now H3, I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to add 36. Too much. 24. Yeah, that seems good. Yeah, the rest is fine, I guess. So if you can see this, I'll show that later anyway. So now I don't want all of my text to be centered. I want it to be centered by default, but I don't want these information to be centered. I want it to be on the left itself. So how do I only apply, like when I say text align center here in the body, it means that everything that comes within the body will be centered aligned, including this. But I want to create an exception only for these to be left aligned. So how can we do that? That's where an element called div comes into play. So I'm going to put this inside a div tag. I'm going to put these information inside a div tag. Div here /div here. So I put all these content, these other than the headings, inside a div tag, right? Education. And I'm going to style the div. I'm going to say text line left. So only the elements inside the div tag came to the left. Now so here what we're doing is we are applying the same style to both the divs. As you see, there are two divs here, and just like we apply when we apply H2, and the style applies to all elements that have H2. Now let's say I want, just for example, let's say I want this in the this in the left. I want this in the left, but I want this in the right. But if I put right here, both the divs go to the right? So how do I distinguish this from this? So there are two divs here. How do I distinguish between the two? So for that you can use something as ID, an attribute called ID, and let's say I'm putting it as education content. right? And I'm just going to copy this, and by default let it be left. So now everything's in the left, and only for a div with a tag, that's what this hashtag means, with a tag education content should have text align right. So now when we look at it, since I put education content, I put this tag education content and put it here, what this thing goes here, all the rest goes to the left. So like, just to show you, if I put the id on this div, this one will go. Similarly, you can it doesn't have to be a div, id can be applied to almost any uh, any of the elements. So let's say I'm adding it to this h2 for professional experience. So now professional experience should be right, I guess. Didn't work. Oh, that's because you put div. Okay, if you want since it is here, it will this would only apply if education content is an id of a div. So but if I put it just hashtag education content, it would work for any element. So yeah, this is what I recommend. I don't usually put div, I just wanted to show you guys. So if you put hashtag education content, anything with the div text align would be right aligned. But the problem is you cannot apply it. ID should be unique. You can only apply it to one div or one element. You cannot apply it to two different elements. But let's say you want to apply it to two different elements. Say cybersecurity analyst. You see these. I want to reduce space above it. So but the problem is there are two paragraphs here. I cannot add a paragraph because that would change the style of this paragraph as well. I only want to change the paragraph of these two. In that case, you use a thing called class. So I'm gonna add a class subtitle to this. Also to the second paragraph, you can add class to multiple elements. And in style, you don't use hashtag for classes. Hashtag is for IDs. You use dot subtitle for class. You use dot for classes. And I'm going to get rid of the margin top. So I'm going to make margin top 0px. That should work. It doesn't work. I guess there's spacing underneath the h3 tag as well, and not just the paragraph. In order to see that, you can use inspect element, and if you take inspect element and the h3 tag, and under the layout tab you can see the margins. So here there is 24px above and below, that's where there's still spacing there. So in paragraph there's also space above and below, but I got rid of the top one by making margin top 0px. So now I have to also get rid of the spacing below the h3 tag. So let's do that. So I'm going to change this to margin bottom because we need to get rid of the bottom spacing, and I'm going to change the class to the h3 tag instead of the paragraph tag, because you're getting rid of the bottom margin for the h3. So that works, but still there is subtitle, there's still spacing of the paragraph. We need to get rid of both, so I'm going to change this to with subtitle class. I'm going to change it here as well, and also I'm going to add another class subtitle again to get rid of the top margin of the paragraph. So I'm going to get rid of top margin of the paragraph and the bottom margin of the h3 tag. So I'm going to add subtitle class to the paragraphs. and that should work. Yes, it does work. So just a recap of what I did here. First, I got rid of the margin for the H3, which usually is 24 on top and bottom, and now it's just 0px. And for the paragraph, it usually has some spacing on the bottom and the top, but I got rid of the top margin using margin top 0px. So that's why there's no spacing between the two. So S3P, and there's some spacing, and that's just the font. There's nothing you can do about it. Actually, there is something you can do about it. I'll show you. If you change the unit to a negative value, say negative 6px, you can reduce the spacing further. Let's just take it up a notch and see what happens. So this overlaps, and that's what negative. So you can use negative values as well for margin, but we don't need that right now. I just did this to show you the hashtag thing, so I'm getting rid of it. I don't really want it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But if this page looks like this, but if you go to page 2, it looks like the old way because we haven't linked the style to page 2, right? So let's do that as well. So I'm gonna just copy this thing. So when this looks like the old one. If you notice here, there is I didn't add the div here, so that's why this thing isn't going to the left, it's staying at the right. So now this is one way of doing styles, and there's another way for doing styles, which I'll be showing you. Before that, I just wanted to show you another cool style thing. For image, I'm going to make the image circular. Like I don't want it square, I want it circular, so I'm going to add border radius. Now another other than px, you can also add percentage. So let's just I'm just going to show you 24%. What happens is it takes 24% of the height or the width and puts that much radius into the corner. That's what this thing does. It creates a radius and creates a curve of that certain radius. So in this case, it took the value of the height and the width, which is same for this image, so that's why it's a like a perfect circle kind of a curve. If it had different dimensions, it would look different. And in order to make it circular, I have to put 50%. So now it's a perfect circle. If you reduce this, you only have circles here. So it is a cool thing, I guess. So yeah, want to get rid of this space. How do I do that? Oh, I put space myself. Okay. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm just going to make it margin top. I'm going to add a little bit more spacing there, and this thing is h1, so h1 margin top. I'm just going to add the small spacing instead of the big spacing. Okay, that looks good. That looks good, I guess. And okay, yeah, by default links have these collars that are by default. You can change that as well. You can either add your own color, hashtag 000, or if you want it, but the problem with that is, let's say I change the color here and make it red, just showing an example. The link would stay black because you specifically mentioned it should be black here. So if you want the link to have the color same as the rest of it, you just change it to inherit. So what that does is the anchor tag takes the color from the parent of the anchor tag, in which case in this here it is body, and in body we have put the color as red, so A will take the color red. See, so that's what inheritance, the inherit thing is for. So yeah, so this is one way of putting a CSS, but the thing is, this thing is common for both pages, right? What if I want only the H1s here, I mean the H2s. Oh, did I put H1 here? Well, let's change to H2, H3. H2, sorry. Okay, so if I change anything in this page, it also comes here because both of them share the same style sheet. But let's say I want to add some style specific to page 2. I can do that by adding a style tag here. So this is another way of adding style to your style, the CSS code to your web page. And let's just say I'm making H2 a bit, let's just say I want everything here to be on the left. So yeah, that's what happens here. There's a space here because we added the space in the A tag over here. What's that? Yeah, A tag. So let's just get rid of that as well. 0px. So yeah, I'm just going to add a little margin on top. Oh, that doesn't work. I'll show you why later. Yeah, so here it is center as we put it in style, but if you go to page 2, because we put the style here, it changes here, right? There's also another way to do specific styling, which is the style attribute, inside which you can add style right. So it changes just the style for this paragraph. So these are the three methods for adding style to your page. First one is external style sheet. This is called the external method because the style is in a sheet external to this page. The second one is internal style tag, which applies to anything you say here. So you put the code inside the page, and also this is called inline because this is in line with the tag that you're using. So this type of adding CSS is called inline. So inline, internal, external. So these are the three ways you can add styles to your page. So I'm just going to get rid of this. I don't really want this. I just did that to show you. Okay, just to show you another thing, I'm going to add I'm going to put an ID here and say with border. So I'm going to add a border. I'll show you how to add a border. Hashtag with border. Right, I think I used ID here. Yeah, I used the ID. So hashtag with border. So the way to add a border is the border style attribute, where it takes 3 arguments or 3 parameters, which is first the size of how thick the border should be, solid, which means that the line should be solid. You can also add dotted or dashed. I'll show you what it is, and then you add the color of the border. So let's head to page 1. So yeah, that's a border, right? If you change it to solid, it will become a plain one. Let's just stick to this for now. What I wanted to show you is if I add margin, let's say I'm going to add a lot just to so that it's really visible to you guys. So when I add margin, what happens is the spacing comes outside the border. Okay, it applies spacing outside the border. What if you want space inside the border? That's where you use padding. So padding adds space inside the border. So that's two differences that you should notice. There are two spacing options here. One is the margin and the other is the padding. So you use margin when you want to add space between the element and whatever all the elements surrounding it, and if you want to add any spacing within the element, that is between the element and its content. So this is the div and this is the content of the div. See, this is the div and this is the content. So when you add padding, you're adding spacing between the element and its content. So those are two options here that you can use. So which I don't really want right now, so I'm going to get rid of it. I'm just going to add a little bit of margin here on the left. So yeah, I think this looks good, I guess. Again, let's do something. Let's replace these with icons. Okay, there are different methods of adding icons. I'm going to show you the simple one. We can just download icons of the internet, say website icon. This is a website that I use very often, so I'm going to use this one, or you can just Google and then download it from Google. So I'm going to check website here. I'm going to search website. I'm going to use this one, download. So I'm going to move that downloaded thing to images here. I'm gonna rename it to web.png. Let me just quickly download the rest of them, which is LinkedIn. I'm gonna take this one, or let's just take this one. Same for GitHub. Like this. I'm going to take this one. I'm going to choose a different one for website, because the previous two that I took was square, so I'm going to find a square one. Let's just leave it. Downloads. That's fine. So in here I'm going to change the link content from my website to an image. So img, the source is images / web.png, and add website icon. I'm going to do the same for LinkedIn. And also GitHub. So okay, these are really huge, and if you notice, we downloaded square ones, right? If that's visible here, we downloaded square. Okay, we downloaded square icons, but it's circle. Why is that? It's because we added the circle style to image in general and not just the icons. That's why I download the square ones, just to show you this. So I'm going to make this specific to my image, just my photo. So I'm going to add an ID here, say TP. I'm going to change this to TP. I'm just going to put this at the end. There's no specific order for doing this, but I usually prefer putting IDs in the end. And let's also add a class for the icons. So I'm going to put height of the icons as 48 pixels, and I guess that should work. If you put icons here, class equal to icons. Oh, okay. Before that, usually has a cool feature you can use. You can, if you press Alt, I'm pressing Alt right now. If you press Alt and select these, you can type in all 3 lines at the same time. So yeah, that works. What is this? page white space. It's a white space. Oh, that's the underline, I guess. So let me just get rid of the underline for to remove the underline. It is text decoration none. If you put underline here, it would be underlined just like this. The link is underlined, that's why there's this small line over here. So I'm just going to make it none. So yeah, that works. So yeah, so this should work. Goes to my website. I have a slow internet connection. I don't know why. LinkedIn, GitHub. So yeah, this works. Page 2, page 1. So I didn't tell you why the margin for page 2 didn't. Let's add an ID here for page link. Okay, I'm gonna do the same for the other page link. And if I add a margin to the top, let's say 60px, the margin does not appear because there are 3 types of elements in basically, if you're classifying it based on how it is displayed. There's a style called displayed. There are basically 3 types of elements which you can see here in the display attribute display style, which is what you should be worried about is block, inline and inline block. So headings are blocks because headings are a separate line. They stay in a separate line. They don't mix with the rest of the content. Always the heading and the rest of it would be in different lines. So just to show you what I mean, like next to professional experience, I'm going to add some text. Okay, so Prettier by default does this, but it shouldn't work if I put BR here. Logically, only if I put BR here, only then there should be a break. But even then, this comes as a separate line. But if this was not H2, let's say it is not H2, in that case the text just comes here. Or let's just say it was just a B tag, which is bold, which I showed you yesterday. It's just a B tag, then the content just comes in the same line, because the B tag is what is known as it has the, by default it has display inline, so it is an inline element, and that's why it shows an error here. Inline elements cannot have margin top. It can only have margins on the side. It cannot have margins on the top and bottom. So B by default is an inline element, and H2 headings, all that are block by default. Now block can have upper and it can have the upper and lower margin. So if I put page link as, so I'm going to make the link block. It is right now inline because the anchor tag is inline by default, but when I change it to block, it would get that spacing. What else changed here? Okay, I'm just gonna try and add more of this. Let's say 240. Yeah, so that works. Similarly, let's say I'm adding, just to show you, I'm gonna add page 1 here, which is the same page. So index.html, I'm going to change this to class because id can only be unique just to one element, but I'm going to add class here. So the problem with block is it will always come in two different lines. What do you want? What if you want the margin but it should appear on the same line? That's where you use inline is when both of them are together, but you cannot put the margin. Block, as you saw before, comes in two different lines. So a combination of both would be inline block, which means you get the you get options like margin. It's just not margin, there are other options that you can use. So it comes in the same line, but at the same time it has the margin options. That is what inline block is for. I just wanted to show you that, but let's just go to the old format just with the id. So that's what that's mostly the three different types of elements that we use. There are other there's another type called flexbox, but it's kind of complicated, so we are not getting into it. There's also another one called grid. Those are comparatively new display types, but they're like super complicated, so I'm not going to get into it right now. So let me just get rid of this text. So yeah, we made the resume page, we added some style. Tomorrow let's look at how to make it interactive, like add some buttons to it, and when you press the button it should do something. That's what we'll be looking into tomorrow. That's it for today. It's a rather shorter tutorial compared to the previous ones, but before concluding, let me just see if I missed something. Wait, session or flow. There are a lot of styles here. It is pretty, if you know all these whatever I showed yesterday, if you'll find these easier to catch as well. So what I told you is just the basics that you definitely would require, but there are many other CSS properties that are there, just like HTML, and I cannot show you all of them, so it's good if you can. It would be better if you look at it yourselves, because there's a lot. If I'm going into all of them, it's going to take ages. So yeah, that's it for today. I know it's a short one, but that's all I have to say about CSS. This is basically what you'll need for CSS for developing stuff. There are other more advanced CSS attributes. Just look into it. And again, like yesterday, even though I asked you to put screenshot in Slack, a lot of them didn't. I only saw 2 screenshots, I guess, out of 78 people, which is disappointing. So I'm gonna ask again, please do this and then put your screenshots. Okay, so I'll see you in the next tutorial.